At the table, the standard roll looked better than expected. But first impression is not proof. Now we do this in order. Every standard roll coin will get a Scope 1 first pass for the obverse. Quick little moving light surface read. Then the coins that raise real questions will move to the Dino-Lite. S1 starts the baseline. All right, so we start with S1. This is where the suspicion starts. We have a coin with very strong brightness, but we have cheek abrasions and some surface continuity issues that definitely are going to need a closer look. So this one is going to be marked for closer examination under the other scope. All right, this is S2, and it basically gave us the very similar early comparison to S1. Bright, abrasions, and possibly altered. So that one may also need a second look under the other scope. All right, S3 is the coin that drew quite a few comments from the last episode. This is the 1899 New Orleans with either a dipped or a halo concern. So that one may also need additional surface examination. All right, this is S4. This is an 1881 S that gave us a much stronger reference point. It looks much more acceptable as a baseline mint state coin. S5, we've got a routine New Orleans baseline coin. It's useful, but it's not where the story changes. All right, this is S6. Now, this one had a potential problem in the form of a scratch or a gouge right over there on the right. As the light moves across, you can see it kind of forming on the right side of the screen. So that's going to require some additional surface examination. S7 is one of the stronger standard candidates if the surface holds. S8 matters because viewers noticed a halo effect. So this one can't be buried in a fast pass. This is S9. This is the rougher of the 1884 O's. And based on that surface appearance right there, we're going to need the scope to further explain why that table view was not enough. S10, another 84O, gives us a duplicate comparison. Has the same date in mint, but a different surface read. This one looks a little bit more genuine. Doesn't have quite the same questionable surface appearance. S11 is this 86 Philly, and this one looks like a strong baseline candidate. This one will stay in the baseline group. S12 is a 1902 O with surface abrasions, weak strike, and enough surface uncertainty that it has to stay on the watch list. All right, S13 and 14 are the doctrine beat. This is what 10 drives home repeatedly. They're bright, but shiny is not the grade. The question is whether the surface behavior makes sense. S15 is this 1881 Philadelphia. This gives us a little bit more positive comparison. This one appears to show appropriate light behavior. S16 is an 86 Philly that, much like S15, shows much more appropriate surface behavior. S17 is this 1882 S, And this may be the best technical candidate from the standard roll, if that flashy surface holds under macro surface inspection. S18 is the visual surprise, but that color has to be believable. S19 is a pretty routine O-mint baseline coin. We will check out those surface marks a little closer. And S20, this 85O, gives us one last possible stronger coin before we actually enter into the ranking. All right, this is S3. This is the 1899O that several viewers of the last episode were already suspicious of. And I understand why. At the table, it has the kind of brightness that might pass a quick first impression. But under moving light, I am not just asking whether it's bright. I'm asking whether that brightness behaves like original luster or like a surface that has been dipped, altered, or disturbed. We'll need the secondary scope pass for a macro surface inspection to determine the outcome of this one. While I am able to get closer with my current microscope setup, the new scope that'll be here hopefully tomorrow will make microscopic surface inspection much easier, much clearer, and much higher resolution. So we're going to reserve this one for that kind of scrutiny. S8 gets its own look because this is exactly the kind of coin where a camera can make the first impression tricky. If the brightness forms a halo, but the luster does not flow cleanly through the fields, that is a reason to slow down. If the light still moves in a coherent way, the coin gets more credit. This one might get a pass, but I think we may have to take a closer macro surface inspection view of this one as well. S17, this 1882S, may be the strongest technical candidate from the standard roll. This is where the evidence pass has to be fair. Not every bright coin is a problem, and not every mark kills a coin. If the light moves naturally and the surface acts coherent, the coin gains credibility. So this one belongs in the candidate pile, unless the Dino-Lite scope tells us something very different. All right, this is S13. This is one of the two 1921 Philly coins. Now, this is what makes S13 a possible trap. A coin can look bright and still raise questions. And this is S14, the other 1921P. This lets us compare a similar 1921 surface without turning the lesson into a one-coin guess. The question is not, is it shiny? The question is, does the surface carry light in a way that makes sense for original undisturbed metal? These are exactly the coins that need deeper macro proof later. This is the other side of the evidence pass. Some coins don't need hype. They need a limiting factor. The issue is not just that there are marks. The issue is whether the surface still carries light cleanly, and whether one problem becomes the thing that defines the coin. S18 is the visual surprise from the standard roll. The table view already made this one stand out, but under light, it becomes more interesting. Toning alone does not make a coin better. Toning alone does not make a coin better, but it does make this one worth isolating from the rest of the roll. And S20 gives the standard roll one last possible stronger coin. It has enough going on that I don't want to dismiss it from the table view alone, but it still has to survive macro proof if it enters the grading conversation. This cleaned piece dollar is not from the Woolworth roll. I'm using it as a reference because the hairlines are easy to see. On a cleaned surface, the close view often shows a busy directional pattern cutting through the field. The point is that not every line means cleaning. The point is whether the surface has that same disturbed directional character. S3 is the coin several viewers questioned, and it deserves the close look. Scope 1 showed why the light behavior raised a question. The Dino-Lite lets us check whether the brightness is supported by believable surface texture. I'm not final calling it from one view, but S3 stays in the question pile. S13 is the trap. A coin can look bright and still raise questions. The question is whether that brightness is supported by believable surface texture. S14 gives us a fair comparison under the same idea. The point is not to punish shine. The point is to decide whether the shine still behaves like original metal when the surface is tested. These stay in the question group unless the close proof clearly separates them. S17 may be the strongest technical candidate from the standard roll. The Dino-Lite is not only for suspicion, it can also protect a stronger coin from being judged only by doubt. The close view does not make this perfect. It gives the surface more credibility than the questionable coins. S6 is the lower edge lesson if one flaw becomes the thing that defines the coin. The issue is whether this is just another mark or whether it becomes the limiting factor. S18 is the visual surprise from the standard roll. The close view is not here to hype the color. It's here to decide whether the color and the surface deserve more attention. S18 stays in the watch pile for the limited comparison. After the evidence pass, I would not treat the standard roll as one uniform group. A few coins still look like candidates. Several are ordinary roll coins. A few need caution because the brightness or surface behavior does not fully convince me, and at least one or two are clearly weaker than the first impression. The table view tells us what a buyer might think. The evidence pass tells us what the surface is able to prove. The Dino-Lite did not replace the Scope 1 test. It refined it. Now, the standard roll has a real baseline. The limited roll has only 10 coins, which means it has less room to hide. The standard roll made the first claim. Limited has to answer it.